Welcome to the 401k Marketing Podcast. Today we are joined by a communications expert who has helped hundreds of wonderful, talented professionals to speak with enhanced clarity and to be bold and confident. So welcome, Matt Mosich, to the podcast today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Very much excited to be here. Can't wait to help your listeners out a little bit with something that impacts us all.
I'm going to start out with a quick story, and then I'll add into our today's questions that we've talked about before. So when I was coming back into the speaking circuit, it was right after I had my kid. It was right after COVID, and I was a little, believe it or not, nervous. I used to be a 6 months a year roadshow warrior, lots of conversations, lots of stage time. But stepping back into it, I was like, oh, do I still have that ability? So I hired an amazing public speaking coach. And Matt, at the time, I wish I had known about you because I would have hired you. Sure. And she really helped me to tighten up some of my professionalisms. I have a lot of hand motions when I do speaking. And she gave me some fun kind of turn of phrases to utilize that weren't naturally in my lexicon, but now I use them all the time. So the one thing she taught me was if your audience is going to feel uncomfortable, here's a trick. Take your hands and cross your arms. Just cross your arms. Okay. Now, what we're about to dive into is going to feel a little uncomfortable, and I'm going to give you a preview of that. So take your hands and uncross them, and then cross them again. A little awkward, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's going to feel like. And she taught me that. Now, that was a transitional point in one of my presentations. And these are those types of little nuggets of knowledge that when you work with a trained professional like Matt and his team, you learn them. And then when you jump on the stage, give an employee education meeting, go into a finalist presentation, work with your team, you're more confident, you're more prepared. So, Matt, I'm so excited for you to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I appreciate the story. There's loads of little examples like that just stay with us, that change how we think about these situations and provide perspective to something that we might innately understand, but now we just will never forget.
Never. So your work centers around a very powerful idea. The best communicators aren't the most confident, but they're actually the ones that are the most aware. And I deeply enjoy that distinction, and I think it really frames what makes a really great communicator. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, like any deeply rooted insight, it came from believing the exact opposite for far too long. I spent 8 years in Toastmasters, and about 5 years into that journey, I came across this idea that just became part of my personality. So much so that I decided I was going to spend 6 months researching it deeply and then bringing a 30-minute presentation to my Toastmasters audience, hopefully bringing them along in this journey with me. So 6 months, reading, kind of going dark, ultimately leading up to this huge presentation, this huge moment, a lot of anticipation in the club. And I watch people fall asleep.
Oh, that stabs your soul. I watch people fall asleep.
It stabs your soul. I've never heard it said that way, but yes, that's exactly how I felt. But as I'm sure we can both align on, the most embarrassing moments, the most painful moments become the ones that we transition from. And I realized that I created that presentation, that conversation for me. I didn't create it for them. I didn't think about what they needed to know, what they needed to hear, what would make them actually aligned with this thing that meant so much to me. That day was when I realized it really, there's no perfect response. That's what makes communication so much fun, because it's always contextual. It's always based in awareness, based in understanding of who you're speaking to.
I just had a flashback of employee education meetings in
Yeah.
401k world.
Yeah.
And there's this picture that people have done in presentations in the past where everyone
Yeah.
and it's like a joking thing, like, hey, like, do
Yeah.
your employee education meetings look like that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
makes it tickles me because if you think about what financial services is providing to
Yeah.
employee education, like, how are we exciting folks and getting them really passionate about it?
Mhm.
George Fraser is a retirement plan advisor, super animated, and he tries to, at each of his employee education meetings, and I'll make sure he's okay with me telling people this. He talks about it on stage, so like chances are he is, but I'll just double check.
Yeah.
He gives out lottery tickets to all the
Mm.
people, and like they
Yeah.
get fired up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
communication, not making sure that folks are asleep. That's such a powerful story that you shared, Matt. I'm sorry that folks found it boring.
I'm happy. I'm happy. And I'll add one small anecdote to what you just said. Dale Carnegie once said, to be interesting, be interested. Employee education can be fun if you make it fun.
Yeah, that's so true and so insightful. Um, for our listeners, I want to back up just a moment.
Yeah.
Can you share what you believe is the number one
Yeah.
thing that we can all do to
Yeah.
improve communication?
Yeah. And this is another one that I didn't understand for quite some time. Contrary to popular belief, it's not having the perfect response, being articulate. It's actually listening. When I worked in wealth management, spent 7 years there, I was very fortunate to work on a phenomenal team and be mentored by a 30+ year advisor. But it was interesting because he was different than any other advisor that I ever came across. Rather than being the most charismatic, the most boisterous, biggest personality in the room, he probably said the least in the room. But if you took him out of it, you noticed a change in the depth, the excitement, the liveliness of a conversation. And I couldn't help but think, why? Well, I realized he was always the one asking questions. And it wasn't just questions with this specific direction. No, it was questions about the clients and themselves. And when he did ask those questions, it was obvious that he was asking them based in this understanding. Like he cared about them. He knew about their kids. He knew, and it wasn't fake. It was real. And it showed in his business results where he had multitudes of 30+ year clients, deep family relationships. People loved him because he loved them. Listening, I've heard described as a form of love, but it's not just shutting your mouth. It's a lot deeper than that. It's being curious. It's caring about the person on the other end, being present, and ultimately putting yourself second. So you want to become a great communicator? Become a caring listener first. That's going to take you a lot further.
What are some tricks that you can, in today's me first culture, it's challenging for folks to do active listening. There's many studies that say most people are like, oh, I can't wait to figure out the next thing I'm going to say.
Yeah.
What advice do you give people to like put down your phone? Like, how are you coaching them to become an active listener so that way they can respond in a way that's about that person and does not shift the mirror back to them, which I think in today's society, a lot of folks do that, which I just did that right there, but sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And maybe we can take that idea and flip it on its head, because you can be incredibly selfish and become a fantastic listener. When you are speaking, you're not learning. When you're listening, you're learning. So if you actually take the time to listen, not only are they going to give an opportunity to speak about something that they really care about and give them some energy, you're also going to be able to learn in the process. What really helped me, it was kind of interesting. I met the first podcaster that I ever really listened to, like 100 episodes plus. I'm sitting there, I just become obsessed with this idea of questions and how kind of what we're talking about here, they're the real guiding force in communication. So I couldn't help but ask him, how do you come up with these great questions? And I don't know if he never got asked the question. I thought it was surprising, but he sat back and he said, I can't help myself. I just get so curious about the person I'm speaking to and what they know that I just can't help but getting deeper. Listening, we can make it a little bit selfish and realize that it's actually your opportunity to learn and an opportunity for them to feel good about themselves. And to really hone it in is to get curious about the person on the other end. That drives it far for me.
I love this. For all of us who work in a day and day with people, can you describe a framework for asking questions that are going to reveal what kind of communicator someone is?
Absolutely. Like I alluded to earlier, what's so tricky but fun about communication is there's no perfect response. There's not one set response that you need to give to one set question. It's contextual and based on who the person is that you're speaking to. Like you're alluding to, how do you figure out who that person is? How I've found to figure it out, put yourself in the best place, is really 3 Ps. You want to prepare, prompt, and pivot.
Okay.
When I say prepare, I don't mean walk into your prospect conversation, your employee meeting, even the stage with a perfect script. But it's rather to spend the time thinking about who is it that you're going to be speaking to. If you're up on stage, what's the goal of someone who's at this conference? If you're walking into an employee meeting, well, what's your team like? And how do they communicate? What are you trying to get across here? And same with a prospect meeting. You just want to think about, what can I find out about this person in advance that might inform how I'm going to communicate to them? Now, that helps you get there, but ultimately when you get into the environment, you're going to want to prompt. And when I say prompt, it's really, how do you start the conversation? How are you? That's a typical way that people will join into a conversation. It's quick, it's easy, we default to it. But if you actually want to understand how someone is, how they actually communicate, what you'll want to do is just make them think a little bit. So rather than say, how are you? You can change it just a little bit. What's good? How are you today? Or maybe you're in a Zoom environment and you notice something in their background or how they're dressed or a certain energy that they bring to it. Just make an observation. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be complicated, but give them an opportunity to think a little bit. Finally, once you now have a little bit of understanding, you've listened to how they're communicating, you have the opportunity to pivot. Preparation isn't so that you have the exact understanding of what you do. It's so that you have the confidence to pivot if you notice, even it's someone that you've spoken with before. Maybe they're showing up with a different energy today. They're sharing stories when normally they're very direct. Then you have the opportunity to pivot and adjust your communication style to that moment. So really 3 Ps, prepare, prompt, pivot. That's how you have the opportunity to give those understood, aware responses.
Makes sense. Prepare, prompt, and pivot. Okay. That's an easy takeaway, I think, from today's conversation, is to show up prepared, which most of us try to do that in life, but then prompt, so slightly different, like, how's your day going?
Yeah.
How was the most recent holiday, or what did you do this weekend, which is slightly different than, hey, Matt, how are you? Good. I'm good. How are you? I'm good. And then the third one is, how do you pivot? So read the room.
Exactly.
I think read the room is a life skill.
Yeah. It's always tricky when someone can't quite read the room, but we can all learn.
We're just coming off of Thanksgiving. We're recording this a couple days after Thanksgiving. And for anyone here, I want you to think back to your Thanksgiving. And if anyone in your immediate Thanksgiving family did not read the room, then you will understand
Prepare,
what that
pivot.
term means. Read the room. So we're going to jump ahead. And as companies are now implementing pretty widely across America return to office policies, and Some folks, as we mentioned earlier, are kind of crossing their hands about that because
Yeah.
we got a little comfy
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
pre-COVID, post-COVID. And also when you return back to office, your culture is really what's taking center stage.
Yeah.
So in what ways do you believe communication is not just about words, but it's about how culture is expressed through people?
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. When I was 21, I had a realization that's ultimately responsible for why I'm standing in front of you today or sitting in front of you today. I realized that our best ideas, communicated poorly, aren't worth anything. And what was beneath that was this understanding that my communication, our communication, is ultimately what shapes our reputation. Initially, I thought a lot about that as in the context of myself. But about 5 years later, I was sitting within the firm I was working at, thinking about this idea of we are a product of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. But I saw a subtle flaw in that understanding, or at least I uncovered something about who that 5th person was. I realized that it was my company culture. It wasn't one individual person in the company, but it was the collective ideas and thoughts and understandings and mannerisms and mentality. Yeah. Now, frankly, I wasn't in love with that. Culture is the collective communication that is broadcasted within a company. And if we're under an understanding that our communication shapes our reputation, then every single individual's communication shapes that culture and shapes each one of those individuals. It's once we take that understanding and loop it into the idea of culture, we realize how much of the impact that we each have.
So when you're in a leadership capacity and working at a company and you're thinking about your culture as your other teammate, like another person who's there, how can you instill in the people as well as the brand that they are representing the brand, the company, and they all have collective ownership in the firm's future success? How do you bake that in?
I'm a big fan that actions speak louder than words. And if we want to establish what I'm assuming in this fictitious environment is a new way of thinking about something, then it starts with you. It starts with you. Like, for example, if you want to establish a culture of feedback or a culture of mutual collaboration and understanding, it begins with a little bit of vulnerability. Expressing that the reality is that you're trying to create a change, and it begins with you opening yourself up to that same level of change. If we want to get people on board with their own ability to own the culture, then it begins with us giving them that ability by setting the tone, by being upfront, by being clear in the fact that they do have a voice and their voice matters, and then reinforcing it with your then in the future, allowing their voice to have an impact.
So as a mom, it's so funny. Like you see, like we apologize to our kid. Like if you're a new dad, so there are times where like, oh, I'm sorry, mommy didn't do like we were supposed to go to Target or something, and I got crazy busy and I didn't get a chance to. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we didn't get it. My fault. Like we did not. I did not prioritize correctly, and I'm sorry that we cannot go to Target today. I have had so much feedback from people being like, what are you doing? Now, granted, I'm new at this, so if anyone has any advice, I'd love to hear it. But people think like this is a crazy concept. Vulnerability, accountability, accepting things, explaining them in a way that presents the problem, the why, and then eventually a resolution in some cases. In this example, it's a simple one of Target, like we'll go tomorrow. But I think you're right. If you are going to have a really strong company culture, it starts from the top, and you have to model that hundreds of times.
On what you're saying too, it's I'm sure a lot of us have at one point in our lives have like a memory of the moment we realized that our parents weren't superhumans, and that totally shifted the light, and I would say in a positive way. And I think in what you're doing, you're effectively allowing your kids to realize that like we're not perfect, humans aren't perfect. And I used to have this vision that the people that I looked up to most, so let's go outside of parents and just think of like leaders in the
Sure.
world, these
Yeah.
big, they're human too.
Yeah.
The more that we realize that we're all just humans that are operating with faults and failures, the more that we can relate and ultimately align. So it goes to parenting, it goes to leadership. Ultimately, we're all humans trying to figure it out. And if we open ourselves up to that, then we actually open ourselves up to collaboration.
So by breaking down some of these perceived walls, it
Yeah.
actually asks you to prompt better questions, answer them, listen, active listening, and then to have a deeper dialogue, which is
By all means.
kind of the goal of humanity, right?
Connection.
Hi, how are you?
Indeed.
Okay, so we in our prep call we talked about something that you hear constantly in your
Yeah.
active consulting business to help people become more eloquent speakers in a way that's intentional.
Yeah.
And one thing that you heard over and over again was, Matt, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and how can you help listeners create that rhythm so that way where they're going and the audience can follow?
Absolutely. I want to begin this by saying John Maxwell, prominent leadership coach, has a quote that leadership is built daily, not in a day. I'm not going to fully take this, but my adaptation of that is communication is built daily, not in a day. If you want to stop losing your train of thought, it's a two-part process that requires a little bit of effort, but I think it pays off in the long run. When I told my company that I was going to be leaving, you got to imagine that people were surprised. I had it set up pretty good. I was supposed to be taking over a book of business, there for 30 plus years, comfortable, great life. So when I broke the news that things would be changing quite a bit, people were curious. I stayed in my office for a little bit. I was trying to digest it all, but no, someone knocked at my door, my favorite wholesaler. And he said, Matt, I heard the news. I am sad, but at the same time, really happy for you. I want to help. Tell me, what is it that you're going to do? I fumbled through the most pathetic response that I could ever imagine. And think my business is communication and speaking. So I'm sitting back like you can't communicate or speak. But a very powerful word passed through my mind. I said, you can't answer that question yet. So that day birthed a process that I now teach called building your personal FAQ. And it's a little bit of a proactive and reactive response to the questions you think are going to come up and the questions that have come up where you got embarrassed, but you can turn them into an opportunity. How does this relate to not losing your train of thought? When you're building this personal FAQ, what I found to be quite powerful is to give these practice, not memorize, but practice responses, one rep through a conversation framework. The one that I like to use is point, reason, point. What that means is you start out by essentially telling people what you're going to be telling them. You bring in the why behind it. Why did you come to believe this? And you conclude it with your point. Why is that powerful? A, it signals the end. When you deliver that point at the end, it's pretty clear that you have given the floor back. B, you begin with a personal GPS. You begin with where you're going and you have it in the back of your mind on the way there. So that's a strong framework to practice, essentially beginning with the end in mind. And if you know where you're going, it's pretty hard to get lost.
And that goes back to your first thing, was just being prepared.
Yeah.
You really like the P's.
I like the P's. It wasn't intentional, but it happened.
When I was a kid, and I'll say the PG version, my dad taught me prior preparation prevents poor performance. There was the folks who know this one, you know the non-PG version.
I'll find it out right after this. I'm going to look it up.
This is great, Matt. Thank you. Now, I'm actively listening. People have been taking notes. They want to hire you.
Yeah.
How do they get in touch with you? And what are some of your core specialties that when folks say, I would love to have a professional coach help me with my consulting, with questions, with active listening, Tell us more about what you do, and don't fumble through it. But please
Best
tell us more about what you do and how folks can get in touch with you. Thank you.
best way to reach me is via LinkedIn. I'm incredibly active, easy to find. My last name Mosich is very seldom and rare, so therefore you'll find me. How do I work with people? Combination of settings, but it's either one-on-one or in a group environment. We talked a lot about today the idea of your communication shapes your reputation. And I'm finding more and more that companies are interested in how their executive teams can embody that idea in how they present themselves to the world. We work through a process of really understanding your team, your vision, and where you want to go, to then create a program based around this idea of making your team effective, collaborative communicators, and then seeing it through in the environments that really where they're presenting themselves. So whether it's in executive team training or one-on-one, you've got a keynote, a large presentation, or just you're finding some level of challenge within the conversations that you're having, there's a very intentional process that we go through that creates something that's meaningful for you. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
That was awesome. Great. Well, thank you, Matt. Appreciate you joining the 401k Marketing Podcast. For anyone who wants to get in touch with Matt, like he just mentioned, please reach out to him on LinkedIn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening to today's 401k Marketing Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of our guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of 401k Marketing. The content has been available for informational and educational purposes only. We hope you enjoyed.